Heyo, Ashleigh Monet here. Today's video is long overdue. If you're new here, hi, I'm Ashleigh, and background on me, I am a cheap girl. I am textbook definition, struggling artist. I am always on a budget, and I am always a fan of finding a bargain. I can't lie, I kind of had a hard time joining the YouTube art community. A huge portion of the videos I see are like, I bought the most expensive this, I bought the most expensive that, massive art supplies haul. And that's just not realistic for me. And I don't want to throw shade to anybody that does those kind of videos, like good for you. But to me, like spending a lot of money on art supplies, that's not a flex. To me, finding supplies that are just as good as those expensive ones, but for a fraction of the price, like that's my flex. So today we are going to take a bunch of my favorite super cheap art supplies and have them face off against some of the more popular expensive brands that are out there. And we will get to see, do they match in quality? Or if they come up short, does the gap between quality justify the cost of the more expensive supplies? Does that make sense? You'll get it as I go, I'm sure. But we are going to test a total of 4 categories: alcohol markers, watercolor, colored pencils, and acrylic paint. Now in my art, I do use a lot of acrylic markers, paint pens, but we're not going to compare those today because I already did a video where I compared Artex to Posca's. Check it out if you're interested. Spoiler alert, the cheap guy wins. Enough of me talking. Let's jump right in and face off these supplies. Let's start off with alcohol markers. Today, the expensive markers that I'm going to be testing are, of course, the Copic sketch alcohol markers. These are expensive to the point where I could not justify buying a large set of them, but luckily they are sold individually, and I knew I'd be using green today, so I just bought a range of 3 greens. Now, the cheap option I'll be putting those up against are these hotu alcohol markers. Hotu just sent me these. I've only just tried them, but they are good. I know it's pretty widely recognized by now that an affordable alternative to Copics are Ohuhus, and they've proven to be pretty equivalent in quality. Well, Hotu takes Ohuhu and provides an even more affordable option. But do they stack up in quality? This particular set has 60 markers, brush tip on one end, chisel tip on the other. Got a decent variety of colors, so I pulled 3 greens that I felt were the most similar to the Copics I have. So here we go. We are literally going to be testing side by side, apples to apples, pun intended, because I'm going to be drawing a green apple. I decided that some, like spooky fruits would be a fun theme to work with for this video. And I'll do 1/2 with the expensive supplies and 1/2 with the cheap. Since we are literally just testing the markers, I'm going to use the same fine liners and juicy highlights on both sides. Like, no need to get crazy with it and buy different ones of those. I decided to draw this green apple with a bit of a sour expression on his face because I think green apples look super appetizing, but they are far too sour for me. Okay, let's do the Copic side first. One note I have about Copics compared to most other alcohol markers I've tried, the brush tip is super soft and flexible, which I didn't love. I like a bit more structure to my brush tip. And now the Hotu side. Okay, now I can finish off the drawing by thickening up the liner. Oh, and I forgot about the stem. I don't have a brown Copic, so I'm just going to use the Hotus for this, but let's not count that bit when it comes to the comparison at all. Adding some fine liner, sketchy texture all over. I love that to give it kind of a little bit of a spooky vibe. And then it's juicy highlight time. And there's the first face-off, completed. Take a hard look, make your assessments, and I'm going to tell you guys my thoughts and do a price comparison after. Again, the left were the cheaper Hotus, and the right were the more expensive Copics. Although one little aside that I want to address, I'd say the biggest complaint I get on my channel is people saying that I don't use the proper paper for the supplies that I use. And if I did use the proper paper, it would make a world of difference. So to give these markers a proper test, I did use Canson marker paper. That was an interesting experience, but in the spirit of comparing cheap supplies to expensive, I wanted to factor the paper as well, so off camera, I did redraw the apple on my regular printer paper, and here's the difference. To be perfectly honest, there isn't much of one. As far as vibrancy, feathering, I don't see any difference. The marker paper does have a slight edge with the blends. They appear a little smoother, whereas you can kind of see the outline of a few strokes on the printer paper. Now, the printer paper works out to be less than 1 cent per sheet, and this marker paper runs about 14 cents per sheet. With that, I think the marker paper was in fact better, but does it look 14 times better? You can decide for yourself. Personally, I'm probably going to stick with my regular printer paper for markers because I'm cheap and I don't notice enough of a difference to justify that price jump. But that was just a random paper detour. Now we can discuss the cost of these two marker brands. Again, I was only able to buy 3 copics. Meanwhile, I have a whole set of hotus. The 3 copics on Amazon costed almost $6 per marker, so this half of the drawing costed me $17 to make. The hotu set on Amazon costs $40, and with 60 markers works out to a cost of 66 cents per marker. So this half would have costed $2 to make. Overall, it's clear that the hotus are extremely cost-effective compared to the copics. As far as the results, I definitely wish I could have gotten dead-on color matches to make it easier to see a clear winner. But just looking at the blends, I don't know. I feel like I see a lot more texture on the copic side than the hotu, where the blends are nice and smooth. I don't think either one of these performed badly, but when you compare the cost of hotus versus copics, the hotus are definitely my recommendation. I mean, you can't say that the copics look 8 times better than the hotus, but they cost 8 times as much. The price point of these hotus just could not be better. Okay, what I said there was actually a lie because the price point did get better. Yes, Hotu wrote me the other day and told me that they are having an incredible sale right now, where if you buy on Amazon before March 22nd, there is a $9 off coupon, and then additionally you can apply a promo code to get another 43% off. That is crazy. So normally when I review a new supply, the question that I always try to answer at the end of it is, if I had to buy these on my own, would they be worth the money? And for the first time in the history of my channel, I can say that I already have. I'm sorry, I couldn't resist. That was like way too good of a deal. So for this video, Hotu sent me the 60 brush markers that I used for the comparison. I knew I was gonna need brush markers for the comparison because the copics are brush tip. So I really, again, wanted to like compare apples to apples. But I personally enjoy just a regular fine tip, which they have 100 set of those as well. So they sent me those. And I've been enjoying using these like in my own personal time. This is my favorite of the 2 sets. Nothing wrong with the brush tip. It's just, again, personal preference. I like a fine tip. So when they emailed me about the deal, yeah, I ordered another 100 back. Did I need them? Absolutely not. Like, I just cracked into this 100. Do I have space for them? Also not so much. But I cannot pass up a deal like that. A girl loves a bargain. So the process was a little tricky for me. Basically, you go to the product page. I'll do a little barcode here, QR code. And next to the product, there will be a little box that you check to get that $9 coupon. Add it to your cart. It'll already show the $9. And then when you go to check out, go into your payment methods, and that's where you can input a promo code. Just type in the promo code that you see on your screen, and then it takes the extra percentage off. And you guys, with that deal, the marker set that I wanted, which was $59.99 originally, those 2 discounts took it down to $27.50. 100 markers, $27.50. That takes it down from the already awesome price of 66 cents, I think we said it was, per marker, to now 27 cents per marker. That is unreal. That is unheard of. You're not gonna find that elsewhere. If you want them, act quick. Like I said, March 22nd is when they told me the deal would expire. So anyways, let's get back to the comparisons. Okay, moving on to watercolor. For the expensive supply, again, I couldn't bring my cheap self to pay for a full palette of these watercolors for the price that they were asking. So instead, I bought 2 little individual pans of Winsor Newton Professional watercolors in the colors that I'm gonna need. And then for the cheap side, I'm just going to use the no-name watercolor palette that I have literally been using since the start of my channel. She does look a little rough. Here's what it looks like new. She's been through it, okay, but she does me proud. And we have chosen to go cadmium yellow and burnt umber because we're doing a banana. Starting again by lining the whole thing. This time I chose to make the banana look a little worried and kind of like sickly because bananas are my go-to when I have an upset tummy. Like, they make it so much better. I'll start again with the expensive half. Since the banana is such an odd shape, rather than split it vertically into left and right, we're going to do horizontally, top and bottom. I did like the Winsor Newton watercolors. They were quite easy to use, went down very vibrant with just one coat. Using my palette, I found I did need to do 2 passes to get that same level of vibrancy. Also, I did the brown spots before it was fully dry, so on this side, they aren't as crisp. They ended up having that very watercolor flow to them. But now we can finish off the liner. And of course, add our juicy highlights. And here is the finished banana. Let us examine it under a microscope. Again, the bottom half was done with my cheap palette and the top with Winsor Newton Professionals. My thoughts on this, I will say I cannot distinguish between the 2 sides as far as vibrancy goes. Again, I may have made this side a little wetter than the Winsor Newton side initially, causing me to have to do a second layer and making the spots a little less crisp. But come on, this is like as close as you can possibly get. Seeing them this close, I can't say that there's any desire on my end to upgrade to the more expensive watercolors, especially with what I'm about to tell you, the cost. These 2 watercolor pans on Amazon costed $10 each. So the top half of the banana costed $20 to make. With my cheap palette, I did end up using 4 different colors: the light yellow, this golden yellow, a lighter brown, and a dark brown. So 4 colors out of the palette. There are 48 colors on it. The palette costs under $9, so that's 18 cents per pan. So with using 4 of them, the bottom of the banana costed me 75 cents to make. 75 cents versus $20. Nearly indistinguishable results. No question, bye-bye Winsor Newton, I'm sticking with the cheap stuff. And of course, I opted to put this one through the paper test as well, since people get outrageously offended that I watercolor on printer paper. So this was done on Canson watercolor paper, which works out to about 33 cents per sheet. Youch. But because the paper is so thick, I did experience way less warping than I'm used to, which that's very nice. But for the sake of argument, off camera, I did watercolor the banana on regular printer paper. This one I did feel made more of a difference than the marker paper, particularly with saturation and vibrancy. No lie, the banana lost a little of its beauty when it dried on that printer paper. But again, at 33 times the cost, not to mention the added thickness, I'm likely going to continue watercoloring on my cheap paper, at least for my prompt books and the things that I don't want to add bulk to. But definitely outside of that, just like a regular watercolor piece, I actually do think watercolor paper is worth the investment. Like, I liked it and it didn't break the bank. Moving on to colored pencils. For the expensive supply, we have Prismacolor Premiers. Shout out to my subscriber Jamie who sent me this set. You are the best because these are not cheap. They do make more expensive colored pencils, but I feel like the majority of people would agree that Prismas have to be like the most popular elite pencil. So many pencils. And those we will be putting head to head against the Amazon Basics Premium Colored Pencils. These are also soft core and have a decent variety of colors. Let's see who comes out victorious. Starting with our line work, this fruit is going to be my favorite, a strawberry. Oh, I love strawberries. They are so sweet and delicious. It almost feels wrong to eat them. So I want my strawberry to look kind of evil. Now I decided to kind of work backwards on this one and actually do all of the finished line work beforehand this time, because with colored pencils being so waxy, it's really hard to add more liner after the pencils have been laid down. Okay, now we have pulled comparable colors out from each of the 2 sets. We'll go back to doing the left and right sides, starting with Prismacolor on the right. And the Amazon Basics on the left. Okay, finished product. I love the design, but okay, let's focus. We're comparing the pencils here. Again, Amazon Basics on the left, Prismacolor Premiers on the right. This is another where both sides are pretty neck and neck. The Prismacolor side, I do think has the edge on saturation. The colors do look just a little bit more vibrant, but I used a colorless blender on both sides, and I actually used it twice on the Prismacolor side, and there are still lots of little breaks where you can see the white paper peeking through. I'm not getting that nearly as much on the Amazon Basics side. And all of these unfortunate smudges came from the Prismacolor side. As I was using that colorless blender, it was creating a colored pencil dust buildup on the page. I tried to blow it away and it wouldn't, so then I go to wipe it and it would smudge. Side note, I used Strathmore colored pencil paper for this comparison, which was by far the most expensive paper at 43 cents per sheet, and I did not care for it. I think most of these smudges were made worse by this paper. It's similar to printer paper, but has a much rougher surface, which I think really made more dust during the blending. But again, it was the Prisma dust that made the smudges. The Amazon Basics dust really didn't, so I don't know. I feel like a bit of a broken record, but when you factor the cost difference, you guys, the Prismacolor 150 set is currently going for $142. So that's 94 cents per pencil. I use 6 pencils out of the set. So let's say it would cost almost $6 to make this half of the page. Now the Amazon Basics, the pack has 72 pencils and goes for $27. So that's 37 cents per pencil. I also used 6 pencils, just pulled similar colors. That's only $2.25 to make this half. I'm sorry, but for less than half the price, I'm going Amazon Basics. Okay, I have to interrupt and give a little disclaimer because I'm sure if I don't, somebody out there is going to call me out. While in this case, yes, I would choose the Amazon Basics set. My current favorite set of colored pencils and the ones I use in most of my videos are in fact a more expensive brand. I use the Faber-Castell Black Edition pencils. They are not super cheap, cheaper than Prismas, but definitely more expensive than the Amazon Basics. And I'm gonna be honest with you about the reason why, and it is so superficial and vain, but I love that they're black. That's it. That is the only reason they are my favorite pencil. Oh, I wish Amazon Basics would make a black pencil, because if that was the case, legitimately, I would never buy a Faber-Castell again. I just wanted to put that out there. I wanted to explain myself. Somebody would be like,
oh, you like Amazon Basics, but you never use them.
And I do, just not on camera. On camera, I like the black pencils. So yeah, glad that we cleared that up. I don't want to take away from the Amazon Basics and how good they are. And now for our last test, acrylic paint. For the expensive supply, we will be using the Golden brand heavy body acrylic. People on YouTube seem to go nuts for Golden, so I don't know, we'll see. Me personally, my cheap brand, I'm a big fan of Apple Barrel acrylic paint. I get them at Walmart, they're super cheap, and so far they've worked okay for me. But let's put them to the test. Like every other test, I just pulled similar colors. We will be mixing up some orange because this fruit will be an orange. Imagine that. Started with the golden side on the right. These paints were a very unusual texture for me, like very thick to mix, but when they went on, they were super thin and transparent. They stayed wet for quite a while too, which is good for blending, but not so much for layering. Then it was on to the Apple Barrel paints on the left. I find this texture much easier to work with. But I could not get that same vibrant shade of orange. So I did have to pull out an additional color. The nice thing about cheaper paints is you can afford more color variety and spend less time mixing. But adding that one in, yeah, that got us quite a bit closer. Now it's time to get the liner down for this one using paint pens. It is always a pain to try and get smooth lines when working on a canvas texture, but eventually we got it. I gave the orange a surprised expression because oranges are funny for me. Like sometimes I love them, sometimes I don't. It all depends on whether or not I get a good sweet one, and I have yet to figure out how to pick those out. So I never know what I'm getting. It's always a surprise. A few juicy highlights. And here's the finished piece. I actually think it's super cute. Again, we've got the cheap apple barrel on the left and the expensive golden on the right. To be perfectly honest, I feel torn on this one. I don't know, the goldens gave a really good vivid color, and I like the texture they created more, but then the apple barrel had a smoother blend. One thing, I do prefer the matte. If you guys can see, the apple barrel has a matte finish while the golden has a slight sheen to it. I prefer matte. I don't know, I'm torn. Let's just talk price point. So ultimately, I used 5 of the apple barrel paints and 4 of the golden paints. The pack of the golden costed $50 for 12 paints, so about $4 each. The apple barrels are like 60 cents each, and they have over double the amount of paint in the smaller bottle. So the apple barrel side costs around $3, with the golden side costing around $16. I don't know. I would definitely use these goldens that I've already purchased again. I'm not sure if I would buy more eventually, maybe, but I'm definitely not going to chuck out my apple barrels anytime soon. Well, there you have it. I actually really enjoyed making this video. It was nice to be able to dabble in some stuff that otherwise I wouldn't use. Like, it really took me a lot to convince myself to buy these more expensive supplies just for the sake of the video. If there wasn't a video, I probably wouldn't have bought them, and I would just keep using what I know, what I'm comfortable with. Even though they're all good supplies, it is nice to step out of the box and try something else. And some of the things worked out really nicely. In doing the test, the head-to-heads, it really honestly made me feel so much better about my choices to use cheap supplies, and I don't feel like I'm shortchanging my art by going that route. Now, I know this was not a perfect head-to-head test. I'm sure a lot of the people that do invest in these really expensive supplies are gonna point out things like my test didn't cover light fastness, its resistance to fading over time, longevity, the golden paints, for instance. A little bit went a long way on those. So even though they had less in them than my apple barrel acrylics, maybe potentially, again, can't say for sure, they might last longer in the long run because you use less of them. But there are certain things that it's like, I'm making a video today. I can't jump forward 2 years down the road to tell you how long each tube of paint lasted and whether or not things were resistant to fading. Honestly, all art kind of fades. That's why museums have teams of art conservationists to keep them looking great as they age. I also think that the average person who's gonna click this video, who's looking for bargain art supplies, that's not gonna be their top priority, not really one of their main concerns. So yes, even though it wasn't perfect, I hope it was in fact helpful. I am going to be linking everything that was in this video. With that said, I wish you all the best of luck making art at any price point. Thank you guys so much for watching, and until next time, goodbye.